What's up guys, Everything Apple Pro here, and it's been a good month since the release of the iPad Pro. I've had plenty of time to use this in my daily life, and now that I've got a good opinion on it, I'd like to share with you guys my review of the new iPad Pro. This thing is not cheap. That's what I want to start my review off with. A lot of people are buying these instead of laptops or notebooks at $800. You want to make sure you're getting your money's worth, right? Well, with this video, I want to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this new iPad. And at first glance, this thing is actually huge, a lot bigger than the standard iPad. All that extra screen estate is very nice to have, but do take into consideration it's a little bit heavier to carry around with you than an iPad Air 2, and it requires a little bit more room. But really, when you compare it to a journal or a college textbook, it's saving you a lot of stuff that you'd have to carry with yourself, and it's lighter than a laptop as well. Now, the smart keyboard case is something I really like. It adds a little bit of thickness to the actual iPad, and the Apple Pencil, which are two accessories you do need to purchase in order to use the Pro side of the iPad Pro. Without them, this is just a larger iPad Air 2, so I certainly recommend buying those accessories even though the price is quite steep. Now, straight out the door, you're going to be paying anywhere from $1,000 to $1,200 for this thing, and that is not cheap. So I want to let you guys know whether or not it's worth the money. First, using this thing, it took me a little while getting used to the keyboard. The keyboard is interesting on the keyboard case, although it's not required to use the iPad Pro. It does make things a little bit easier for you. It doesn't have an internal battery. It actually plugs into a port on the side of the iPad Pro, and typing on it, like I said, takes a little getting used to, but once you do have it down, it can be really efficient. And with a keyboard, you can use a lot of shortcuts, which makes typing and a lot of productivity easier. Now, can this thing replace a notebook or a laptop? I mean, the iPad Pro is fast, wicked fast, with a dual-core processor rated at about 2.25 gigahertz and 4 gigabytes of RAM. This thing catches up to entry-level notebooks right now. Now, this thing has more than enough power. The only place it falls flat is on software. Yes, it has split view for applications which are compatible with this feature, but it's not enough. Really, Apple needs to do something different for the iPad Pro. While the software is great for light browsing, maybe some document typing, there's really not much you can do that the iPad Air 2 can't. The hardware on this thing is great. I mean, really, I gotta commend Apple for it, but the software just falls flat. I love the iPad Pro. I just wish it was more pro. There's a little bit of applications that are coming out in the App Store right now that actually take advantage of a bigger screen instead of just blowing up the old app, but right now, the only use I can see for it is for college students. People that need to take notes, need to do some light document typing, some research on this thing. It's great. The battery life is great. I mean, it's very light and portable, but why would you buy this over a laptop? That's the question I ask myself over and over. Now, just because this thing doesn't replace a laptop doesn't mean you shouldn't get it. A lot of people have different uses for it. One is the Apple Pencil. I mean, this thing is great. I really do like it. It charges from the USB port on the iPad, which is, by the way, USB 3.0, and in just 15 seconds, you can get 30 minutes of usage. You can actually check the charge in the widgets app in iOS 9, which is great in the notification center. But aside from that, a lot of people don't like how it's being charged to the port. This thing makes for great drawing. Now, here's a tip. Don't throw away the plastic that comes with your iPad Pro. By covering the display just like this, it actually can replicate the feeling of paper. So for the people that are buying the iPad Pro to do drawing, to do art on, I gotta say it's a great companion. I don't think anyone's made a pencil, or I mean a stylus, this good. Really, Apple has taken a lot of time to make sure that the Apple Pencil will cater to the needs of artists and not necessarily people that just draw, people that do graphic work. There are so many applications for the Apple Pencil, and we'll be seeing a lot of support with third-party apps as time goes on. Now, say what you will about the iPad Pro, but it makes a mean drawing machine, even using the standard notes application. The Apple Pencil has sensors built in, so depending on how much you tilt the actual pencil when on the marker tool like this, it'll actually change the width at which you're drawing with. I thought that was really clever. There's a ton of sensors built into the Apple Pencil that make drawing very accurate. This is one area Apple wanted to make the iPad Pro stand out, and it certainly does. So if you're an artist, if you draw, why not try it on an iPad Pro? Really, it's a great tool for that. And I'm certainly no artist, as you can see, but even I can tell that the iPad Pro would be great for anyone who draws. Now, this brings me to my next point. I love the iPad Pro's speakers. Apple made a lot of sacrifices in battery life just to ensure that the speakers are great. And out of every test I've performed on the iPad speakers on every iPad, the iPad Pro just blew them all out of the water. The sound is very deep and rich. It dominates the room. This is the loudest speaker setup I've ever heard on a tablet. It's that good. Although it's no UE Mega Boom, this thing can actually light up an entire room with sound. Now camera, I don't really use an iPad camera for anything. I mean, you would use a front-facing camera for taking selfies or maybe conference calls or something, and I haven't done any of that. So I can't give you my own opinion on that other than to say that it has the iPhone 6 sensor inside of it basically. Now it doesn't have any sort of optical stabilization or any neat tricks up its sleeve, but it's got a camera, it's got a front-facing camera even though they're not very good at all. 1.2 megapixels for the front, 8 for the rear. Now I haven't done extensive gaming on the iPad Pro, but I can tell you this thing is the most powerful iOS product ever right now, and with 4 gigabytes of RAM, the A9X chip, this thing really makes for a beautiful gaming device, not to mention that huge 12.9-inch Retina display. So my favorite game on iPads is Bastion. You don't need a lot of power to run it, but the iPad Pro will run anything very, very well, especially board games, stuff you'd have to use the iPad laying down on with several other players. So definitely a big thumbs up when it comes to gaming on the iPad Pro. Now, as I wrap up this review, I